Welcome back. Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. It's I saw this story. I'm looking to make sure that I say the date right on when I read this. Noticed this. It's this story. This issue is the story was written. The post was written a few months ago. Not a few months ago, maybe a month ago. And I flagged it, and I thought I need to go back and talk to Michael Petrilli about this because he's the president of the Fordham Institute. He's been on this program before. He's a research fellow over at Hoover Institution at Stanford. He's done a whole bunch of stuff, and he writes a lot you'll see him in all the sort of big league outfits because he's really smart, and they don't mind that he's saying things that sometimes make him uncomfortable. New York Times, Washington Post, because he's really smart and he's got a lot of experience. So this piece is about what makes the title is "What You Make Depends on Where You Live," not just whether you go to college or whether you went to college. So first, welcome back, Michael. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be back with you, Ed.
So the reason I flagged this was because recently, with the attention of the sort of violence and the rioting and things, everybody says, "Oh wow, look at how bad certain things are," or what we're talking about racism and all. And I keep thinking to myself, some of this is coming from people who are in our country that are angry because of where they're stuck. They're stuck in a system that doesn't seem to work. Whether the schools aren't good enough where they are, they're trapped. Whether the opportunities aren't good enough, and it's not necessarily only. There may be a race component, but it's not only race. What's your observation when you watch these, the sort of where the violence is taking place and how it feels in terms of what I just described?
Yeah, I think what we are seeing is that a lot of the tension in our country right now is in these big metropolitan areas. And I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago that when we talk about income inequality, for example, if this is partly about economics, that inequality is now increasing in big cities and big metro areas more so than anywhere else. So after 2016, there was a lot of focus on Trump country, small towns, smaller metropolitan areas out there. And it turns out that those places haven't been changing as fast. The real change has been happening in big metro areas, like where I now live in Washington, D.C., New York, San Francisco. These are places where that economic divide is getting enormous. And we see this in the study that we did. What you're looking at is that college-educated workers are seeing their pay go up, 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 up. But working class folks, the folks that are providing the services, they are stuck. They don't see their wages rising as much. And yet the housing costs, the other costs of living in these metro areas are sky high. And so the people that really have it tough today are those people living in those big metro areas who don't have the higher education, who don't have the same opportunities, and where the middle class really has been hollowed out, where there's just not that many jobs in between the sort of low-wage service sector jobs and these high-wage, college-educated professional jobs. But here's the thing, Ed. That is not how most of America looks. In most of America, you still do have a broad middle class. You still do have these middle-skilled jobs in manufacturing and oil and gas and healthcare and lots of other areas where people can do quite well even if they don't have a 4-year degree. Usually take some kind of higher education, a trade, credential, technical degree, maybe 2-year degree or a 1-year program. So it takes something, but it doesn't necessarily take that 4-year degree like it does in those big metro areas. And outside these big metro areas, we are not seeing as much conflict right now, maybe in part because the middle, especially the middle class, is still holding.
Is the so I want to simplify it because I'm a simpleton. I'm just kidding. But when we talk about this, I want to say something like we're talking with Michael Petrilli, and we're talking about a piece he wrote on where you live and how it impacts it. But is education at the heart of it? I know that's one of your backgrounds too, but is it education? I know it's not college necessarily. In other words, people, if you go to college, it's the wrong degree, or you're not necessarily cut out for college. But it feels like in the places where our public schools have been particularly failing, it's really sort of got people stuck more. Am I overthinking it because that's what I want to see?
No. Look, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Here's the deal. No matter where you are, we need our K-12 education system to do a whole lot better. And yes, it is particularly abysmal in the big cities. It has been for a long time. Though kids lucky enough to go to the public charter schools and some of the private schools via vouchers tend to do much better. And that's been an important lifeline to a lot of people in recent years. But yeah, look, if you live in a big city and you really have to get that college degree in order to make a decent living and be able to afford to live there, then you need to be able to attend a school that's going to get you ready for college. And most schools are not doing that. After 13 years, kids are coming out of high school with very low levels of skills in too many cases. And so they end up doing the minimum wage jobs and, not surprisingly, frustrated by that. Look, in other places, there are more options, and there should be more options. And yet, we still keep pushing most kids in America into that college prep track. But, outside the big cities, if you can do well with the middle skill jobs, with, again, the trades, the technical degrees, we should be encouraging young people when they are still in high school to consider getting started on that path. Yet most high schools in America don't do that. We still push all kids into the traditional college prep programs. The programs that are technical and career oriented are tiny. It's maybe 2 or 3% of the kids that are going through those pathways. We do barely any apprenticeships. We do barely any of that kind of stuff that you see in other countries where we allow young people to get started on careers, and that all's got to change.
Hey, we're talking with Michael Petrilli, and Michael's the president of the Fordham Institute. So in this time of the crisis, right, where all these schools closed down, I mean, we have an incredible number of private schools that are closing and not to reopen. And I live in Northern Virginia now, Michael, and Fairfax County Schools, one of the bigger school districts in the area, in the country, just announced that in the fall, you have 3 choices: virtual, half virtual, or partly virtual. I don't know. And they can't really handle social distancing because the schools are too big, and it's a mess. And what are we learning? I mean, what's the future as we're looking at that? I'm back to I'm still on education. I know you worked in the Department of Education, so I'm not out of your field, but I feel like I'm going back to that. But what's our future of education? And if our public schools are failing and a bunch of our private schools are closing, and what do you think?
Yeah, now look, this is a tough period. And here's hoping and praying that there's going to be a vaccine soon so we can get all this behind us, because it's going to be brutal. Like you say, what you see there in Fairfax County, Northern Virginia, you're going to see all over the country, which is that kids are not going to be allowed to come to school every day because they need to be able to socially distant from one another. See how that works with little kids and even high school kids. I mean, yeah. Kids, they're going to be all over each other. Most likely. It's going to be a huge challenge. And yeah, the private schools are facing enormous challenges because, parents are getting hit financially. And if the private schools are saying that, well, it's going to be half the time online, parents are going to rethink sending in that tuition check. The Catholic schools, they're not getting the collections from the pews because churches have been closed. I mean, this is a huge, huge challenge. I do think once we get through this difficult period, my hope is that we're going to see some positive things come out. We are going to be more open to innovation in our education system, including allowing for more learning to happen at home. There's no reason that we need every high school kid in America to be going to school 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, when, right. They do that as a 12th grader, and then they go to college, and, full load is 2 or 3 hours a day, and they're expected to do a lot more work independently. We could be doing more of that in high school.
Yeah, I think this is going to really make you smile. But I think, and again, and this is why you're the president of the Fordham Institute, and I'm not. But when I see that they can finally have outdoor dining at a bunch of restaurants that probably should have always had that, because in where I live, the county's not enforcing the old regulations. Just go ahead. You're going to have picnic tables. Go ahead, eat outside. Okay, and I think to myself, we're going to rethink a lot of different things. I mean, we're going to, like you said, we're going to rethink education. We're going to think the schedule. Notre Dame, the University of Notre Dame has led the country, I think, in saying we're going to go to school early in August and finish at Thanksgiving. And that's the first we've heard in a long time of totally changing the schedule, right? So a bunch of stuff is going to be able to be rethought, including in the economy. And so in that way, it's exciting. But some of the numbers on how hard it is not easy. So, Michael, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go. Michael Petrilli, it's always good to talk to you, the president of the Fordham Institute, and that is fordhaminstitute.org. You can go there, and I'll also put up this recent, it's not too recent, a month or so ago, essay that he's got. They call it a fly paper about where you live and how it impacts you and different things. It's a thoughtful piece and a thoughtful place to go. So thanks for the time, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed.
All right, we'll take a quick break and be right back. It's Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Be back in a moment.